So the next talk is transgenic female mice with ornithine decarboxylase. Overexpression restricted to urothelium have OAB voiding phenotypes and increased urinary cytokines, a translational, and it doesn't show the rest of the title.
Good morning. It is my pleasure to share with you our work on a translationally relevant mouse model of overactive bladder. I have no financial disclosure. Our project is motivated by our observation that urothelial bladder biopsies from patients with overactive bladder show an increased level of ornithine decarboxylase expression. Ornithine decarboxylase is a key enzyme in polyamine biosynthesis. We therefore pose this question: would we be able to recreate the OAB phenotype by overexpressing ODC restricted to the bladder urothelium? We use a mouse model to answer this question. Using a genetic background of C57 Black 6 with overexpression of ODC restricted to the bladder urothelium, using the urothelium-specific uroplakin promoter 2, we show that there is an increased level of ODC specific to the bladder urothelium, about 20-fold, and that this overexpression is specific to the bladder urothelium and not in other bladder compartments or organs. Voiding frequency is characterized using a voiding spot assay involving filter paper lining the cages and imaging processing that quantifies the number of fluorescent urine spots as well as the area of the urine spot, which correlates with urine volume. Representative filter papers show that wild type and negative littermates void in a characteristic corner voiding pattern, whereas our transgenic mouse tend to void and tend to show an increased number of urine spots and more of them being closer to the center. Quantification of these images confirm that indeed there is an increased number of voiding spots in our transgenic mouse, both for total number of spots and inside or closer to the center, and that there is no difference in the total volume of urine voided. One way to explore possible mechanistic explanation is to look at urinary cytokines. We used a 32-plex that look at 32 cytokines in the urine, and of these 32 that are surveyed, there are 6 of them that are statistically significantly increased in the urine from ODC transgenic mouse at baseline compared to wild type and negative littermates. And the important thing to note is that this is at baseline without any chemical stimulation or physical obstruction. In summary, our mouse model demonstrates increased number of voiding spots correlating to increased voiding frequency and elevated levels of urinary cytokines at baseline, suggestive of a baseline dysregulation of innate immune response. This mouse model serves as a valuable new tool to identify mechanisms of urothelial innate immune response for overactive bladder. I'm happy to take any question.
This is open for questions, and I have one here initially. The ornithine pathway is involved in L-arginine synthesis. And if you overexpress it, does it mean that there's possibly more L-arginine and more nitric oxide, and that this could be involved in relaxation of the internal urethral sphincter?
Thank you for the question. Yes. And we have not specifically explored that aspect. To answer that question directly, we would need to do cystometry and install the device in mice under anesthesia to answer that question. So at this time, I'm not able to say yes or no.
So how do you think it's working? Or how do you think it's causing incontinence?
Our theory is that increased levels of ODC increase the amount of polyamine biosynthesis, and that in turn affects the downstream pathway for immune process. I have a slide that may help me with answering the question. Oh. Okay. Sorry, I'm
You can
not sure how to
if
go
you
back.
do a right click should take you back.
Okay. Okay. I'm not able to get it back. Sorry. Okay, so without the help of a visual aid, our hypothesis is that increased polyamines correlate with increased levels of cytokines being released, and that in turn correlate with increased levels of inflammation that can cause an overactive voiding phenotype.
Any other questions?
Well, did you check whether it's just frequency or the true sort of overactivity in your model?
So for our model, we specifically tested expression of ODC in bladder urothelium versus bladder smooth muscle, and there's no overexpression of ODC in the smooth
My
muscle.
question is about being this a motor effect or a sensory effect,
I see.
because it could be either or both.
Correct, yes. Our hypothesis is that it's not a motor effect, that it's purely sensory.
Interesting. Any other question? Okay, so thank you.
Thank you.